Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. The Light Fantastic is the second book in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, and it's the sixth in the series that I read. At this point, I'm pretty much committed to reading the entire series, all 42 books. Upon the recommendation of several booktubers, I started with Guards back in March of 2023. Which I kind of regret right now. I'll have to read more titles in this series to be really sure, but I believe that the 8th volume for me was not the ideal starting point. Before going into this a little bit more, let me show you how my journey through the Discworld has gone so far. Because Guards was a disappointing read, mainly because of very high expectations that were not met, it took me quite some time to pick up another Terry Pratchett. At the beginning of January 2024, I read The Wee Free Men, which up until now is my favourite. I immediately read the second book in the so-called Tiffany Aching sequence, A Hat Full of Sky, which I liked. At that point, I thought it would be a good idea to start reading the Discworld books in their publication order. Alongside of this huge reading project, I will probably finish reading the Tiffany Aching books. In my case, The Wee Free Men would have been the ideal starting point for my Discworld adventures. In hindsight, of course. Back in March of 2023, I really had to get used to Pratchett's writing style. For one, I had to adjust to his seemingly random POV and time jumps, interjections and sidesteps, which is his way of telling the story. Cutting off a story thread to continue with another or two, and then at some point picking up the first story thread again. Once you know this, you can somehow anticipate better in trying to follow the overall story. Also, his parody and humor was new to me. In Guards, it hardly resonated with me, but in The Wee Free Men, I regularly laughed out loud, as well as in The Light Fantastic. The Knack McFeagle, with Daft Woolly and Rob Anybody as the leading duo, made it very easy to become accustomed to this world where many things are backwards and upside down. Even though the Pratchett way of telling a story here is an issue as well, these books were more accessible for me than Guards was. Being relatively new to this series, I would not presume to make any recommendations on where to start reading the Discworld. Perhaps I will once I've read more books, but for now I can only share with you how one of the most heard recommendations on this topic on BookTube didn't work for me. Book number 1, The Colour of Magic, which I read last February, was, as expected, not great. But I liked the second book, The Light Fantastic, much better. At the end of The Colour of Magic, we left Rincewind, the main character, in a predicament that in a normal world would have meant certain death. His fellow traveller, Two Flower, had managed to get into a space capsule. This was pushed over the edge of the disc by some people, which proves, whatever people say, that there is such a thing as a free launch. Right at the beginning, Pratchett makes me laugh. With this funny reference to the famous quote by Robert Heinlein, "There ain't no such thing as a free lunch," which became so popular that it was abbreviated to Tonstafel. Pratchett's metaphors regularly activated my laughing muscles. Rincewind had been generally reckoned by his tutors to be a natural wizard in the same way that fish are natural mountaineers. Or this one, later on. Rincewind was to magic what a bicycle is to a bumblebee. The language and prose is very dense and requires the full attention of the reader, with sentences like this one. Somewhere in Rincewind's battered soul, the worm of rebellion fleshed a fang. Or, there was no real point in trying to understand anything Two Flower said, and all that anyone could do was run alongside the conversation and hope to jump on as it turned a corner. I can really appreciate this kind of creative handling of language, depending on the dosage, of course. This Terry Pratchett does very good. The poetry is not overwhelming, but it is there. Still, this makes it at times a challenge to not only keep up with the story, but also to grasp the jokes and puns, which many times are hidden within the layered prose. There is a huge number of references to literature, society, and other stuff from our world. It is almost impossible to spot everything. The first book read like a collection of short stories that were glued together to one novel, but with The Light Fantastic, I was really reading a story. A strange planet or star is on collision course with a disk, which again reminded me strongly of the Dragon Riders of Pern books. It is up to the magicians of the Discworld to try and avert this possible destruction of their world. Rincewind finally gets to play his major part. There is extremely much going on, but already at about 25 pages into this book, I realized that Pratchett had gained my confidence. Yes, this was going to work. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll leave it at this. Suffice it to say that the story in this book really entertained me, even though the author distracts the reader constantly with side lanes, cul-de-sacs, and jumps. The scenes with Cohen, the barbarian, the legendary warrior, were the funniest of the book to me. Cohen is now an old man of 87 years, and his teeth had obviously decided to quit a long time ago. When he's introduced, someone is impressed. "Cohen?" she said. "Cohen the barbarian? The very shame." This simple speech impediment is right up Pratchett's alley, and he fires jokes at the reader with almost each thing this Cohen says. He complains how his legend never really got him anything. 80 years in the business, and what have I got to show for it? Backache, pillish, bad digestion, and 100 different recipes for soup. Soup! I hate soup! It's my teeth, you see. No one takes you seriously when you've got no teeth. They say, "Sit down by the fire, Grandad, and have some soup." The Tiffany Aching books rekindled my interest for the Discworld, and The Light Fantastic finally dragged me on board for the entire ride. I gave this book 74 points out of 100, which is very close to 4 stars. This relatively low rating is mainly because of the way the author has composed his story. I need a good story to truly appreciate a book, and thankfully I got that with this book. It wasn't just a rickety vehicle for the author to deliver his jokes, it was a real story. Still, the endless sidesteps and cuts do not help. Nevertheless, I will definitely be continuing with this series. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.